Greetings and welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure. Today we're going to take a look at a big war army that's been painted by a mate of mine at my friendly local gaming store, followed by a quick look at my Golden Boy Stormcast Eternals collection and how they performed against each other in a battle report of an Age of Sigmar 3rd edition game, just in time for me to have to upgrade to Age of Sigmar 4. Let's showcase what my opponent took. The Big War, that's some kind of boss on Troggoth. He has a habit of just pulling the chain and causing self-injury, but then making the guy angry. That's a mega boss. He does what he looks like he does. Can't remember what he's called. Just a standard orc shaman who just jumps up and down. We'll talk about that later. That's a weird knob shaman. Some brutes. Judicious use of blood for the blood god, always to be lauded. Nice mixing and matching of silver and gold. Is that a beast skewer kill bow? Its main redeeming feature that is 22 quid and has some serious office workplace bullying going on there with the one goblin sticking his foot on the head of the one who's trying to load. Can't remember what that's called. Pepper, Big Pig. It's got some kind of intellectual property protected GW name, but everyone just calls it the Big Pig or Pepper. Not really that effective, but we'll come to that. Looks good and terrifying, even if it looks like it's got Lego up its bottom with all the different pieces stuck together. And that's a war chanter. And many more brutes. Brutes as far as the eye can see. And so what did I play with, of course? The Stormcast Eternals, because they've come in various box sets that I've picked up over recent years. The Stormcast Eternals, Sigmar's chosen champions in this era of turmoil. Each of their number was handpicked by the God King, ripped from the peace of oblivion, and reforged to eternally fight and fall in the service to order for Ahura Mazda. Well, they've mixed and mashed a few different kind of tropes from human history. Nothing wrong with that. These guys seem to be a kind of combination of ancient Romans, cherubim and seraphim, kind of angels from the Old Testament, and then I suppose the fallen who go to Valhalla and then just come back fighting. For these warriors, death is not the end. Should they be slain, their souls return to Azir, which I'm sure is an Aesir Viking heaven, in a burst of annihilating force, whereupon they are painfully made whole again and cast once more into the fray. So I've always just assumed that Age of Sigmar is just a faceless commercial replacement for Warhammer in the Old World. Warhammer in the Old World being based on kind of, high medieval, early modern Europe, whereas this is just random. But actually, over the years, they have given us quite a good bit of lore, and it's become its own plausible little world. And I don't think these guys actually are that faceless if you look into what they are. So we've got Indrasta, who's obviously a bit of a Joan of Arc on crack character. She doesn't just ride around telling the Dauphin that he will be king one day. She is a warrior of Sigmar's inner circle, reforged by the God King's own hand and charged with serving as his winged beast slayer. So I'm not sure how she's come back as a proper angel with wings. But actually, if you look at it, I do think that they've done it in a clever way. So if this was like a 3D resin print, it would be insanely detailed and you'd never want to paint it. But if you look at this, what do you really need to do? I would just, if I ever paint this, I'm not sure I will, I would just paint the wings white, use one of the contrast paints and dry brush it, paint some of the armor kind of chainmail colored, just to give it a bit of a different take on the golden bronzy kind of color. I'd wash it with maybe a bit of a red wash with black wash mixed into it. Pick up a few highlights. Do the face, do the hair. Do the stone, dry brush it. Do the tree, dry brush it. I don't know, dark red, maybe even blue or something, dark blue for the cape. And then base it and put loads of grass and tufts and things on the base. And I think that would probably do it. And that would be battle ready, as they call it. You wouldn't need to go to town. So she was my leader, and her role is basically chucking a pretty impressive missile weapon, Vanguard, and then reasonable attacks, which cause quite a lot of damage. So she's a pretty solid player, I thought. I mean, everyone who was watching said generally she's a bit meh, but I thought she was all right. And these are the Annihilators, who are definitely something out of an Avengers movie. With their huge shields, they are hulking Goliaths, often held to be immortal by onlookers. Aren't they all supposed to be immortal, all of these guys, being reforged by Sigmar in the heavens? So these Annihilators are kind of like the Paras. They shoot down out of the heavens. They can be deployed to the side of your gaming table instead of being deployed onto the table. You can put, I think there's a generality of this whole faction. You can put down one unit deployed on the table and then put one on the side of the table and then bring them in during the movement phase. And these guys come out of the heavens and they cause damage to everyone within 10 inches because of the blazing impact. And then when they run in, they cause impact hits as if they were a chariot, which is quite fun. And again, they don't look too complicated to paint. Bit of chainmail, bit of blue on the shield, bit of a wash, and then a bit of edge highlighting. Albeit I might use my trick of using packaging material and some darker and lighter kind of golds and just dabbing it all around so that it breaks it up a bit without you having to do lots of edge highlighting. Now, when I saw this model, I just thought, oh, the movie Troy. You can just hear the fellow shouting, Achilles! And this is a storm strike chariot, which again, you can just parachute in more than 9 inches away from the enemy, and then that's the end of the movement phase, and then in the charge phase, you'll end up having to roll 2 dice and hope to roll more than 9, but you can use your command points to re-roll that once. So you've got a reasonable chance of charging someone, and you get a whole load of Azir Unleashed impact hits. And he's quite fun. I think there was an alternative build with a massive spear, but he looked Greek enough for me as he was. They are growing on me. The question is, do I spend the year painting dwarves for Kings of War, old-timer dwarves, or painting these? Oops. I thought that I would show unusual forethought and not glue him in, only to find that this thing is impossible to paint. Then you've got the Vanguard Raptors, and these guys definitely look slightly Roman. Well, not so much Roman, but kind of dogs of war, so maybe later Roman. Kind of condottieri-like, with their hunting birds. And I took... Where are they? Somewhere here, yes. They've obviously got gigantic crossbows, which look really good fun. Vanguard Raptors have few equals in matters of marksmanship. Aloof by nature, they wield their long strike crossbows with astounding skill. And if you roll a 6, you just cause 2 mortal wounds with no armor checks, nothing on the opponent. And so they really do tend to make their money back. And then they've got these little boids, which are a separate unit you pay for separately. But if you just hover these guys 12 inches away from whatever you're shooting at, you get +1 to hit. The only thing I would say, this is a bit of a modelling video as well as a gaming video, is, these are pretty fiddly. Look how thin those little claws are. Look how wobbly and thin these little, I don't even know what they're called, little ribbons are on their feet. I mean, one of them already broke, and I had to kind of glue it back in a way that I hope when I paint no one will particularly notice. But couldn't they just had them sitting on something? I suppose it's hard to make them look like they're soaring. Or what's wrong with the old style way of just having some kind of plastic peg, transparent plastic peg sort of sticking into their tummies, holding them up, and we can all imagine that they are truly flying. We've got these guys, the Vindictors, who do look like ancient Roman legionaries or something, mashed up with Greek hoplites running around, stabbing people. And if you roll a 6 to hit, again, it's just an automatic mortal wound, no armor check, nothing. It just goes kebab, and they're good fun. And again, pretty simple to paint. Nice mix of ladies and people from different backgrounds, forged into these crazed Valhallan warriors from across the world, not just the European old world. There's 10 of those with their slightly older banner bearer. Oh, my back. That would be me. And actually, are these shields pretty hard to paint? But I suppose what you do is you just paint colour around the edges and just leave the rest of it gold. Then we've got the entertainingly named Vigilors, who sound like something like, teachers checking you're not cheating in an exam. I still remember with great fondness how in one of my GCSE exams, for whatever reason, both teachers had to run out and all the kids started cheating and I didn't. Being the straight-laced little kid that I was and remain. Right, so these took ages to assemble. And it was as if they'd left an algorithm to work it out. And basically there were 2 identical sprues. And it seemed to me that in each case of the 2 ways of assembling it, the computer had found one way that looked absolutely natural and was inspired, and another way that just didn't quite look right. But sometimes they were both all right. So that one looks all right. That one looks all right. That one borderline looks all right. That one kind of was a good kind of brooding look. Let's get you in focus. And these are all very tall. If I put a kind of a 28mm standard human figure there, like from War Games Foundry, it'd be about that tall. But I mean, this looked fantastic, but obviously the tip of that arrow broke off. So they could have made the shaft a bit thicker. So I'm not sure what to do with that. Its future is obvious. It's obviously going to break. That one was all right. That one was all right. That one, I mean, who stands there with their foot on a rock, holding their bow to the side and trying to read a map as if they need glasses? So that one, I was unimpressed by. And again, what's this dude doing? He's just walking, holding his sword out. And that one was pretty good. Man pulling oversized arrow in readiness for knock. Whether the draw or knock loose, whatever they say. And I can't remember the name of this fellow, but he sort of stands there and brings people back and reinvigorates them. And she's a knight incantor, who once per game just can automatically dispel a spell, which is good. And unbelievably, she's being taken out of the range. But I had great fun with her, as you'll see. Very dynamic. Very High Priestess looking. Almost Conan-like. And then there are a whole load, so that was my army. But then there was a whole load of, there are a whole load of miniatures who are being replaced. So these are the original Liberators, which have only played one game, and are quite funky models. I replaced the head there with some third-party head. And these, I think, are seen as too bulky and not very well made, given the technology available at the time. I think they were trying to keep them simple, and they were still feeling their way around what these needed to look like. I mean, those shoulder pads are ridiculous. And so they're trying to make them a bit slimmer, like these ones. So they're going to be new Liberators that look like these. It's funny calling them Liberators. It sounds like a World War II bomber, or people trying to free enslaved people. But then again, I suppose what's wrong with that as a term? I think I might buy the box set for 4th edition. The only thing is, it's so frustrating to have to keep buying these things and then find that they get being recycled in and out. And I think these are being replaced as well. But they're very fiddly, and I might just get rid of them anyway, because I haven't really played with them, and I just, every time I hold them, I feel that they're going to just break. And they look like they're playing the drums or something. So, onto the game, which I will summarise in brief. There were 6 objectives, each of which represented a kind of hot spring or something where if you had too many units standing on it, it could just kind of explode like Old Yeller or whatever it's called and just blow everyone up on the objective. If you controlled 1, you got a point. If you controlled 2, I think you got 2 points at the end of every turn. If you controlled more than your opponent, I think you got 3. And then they've got this quite cool system where there are kind of 6 kind of turn objectives, and you can only use 1 each turn, and they're all quite fiddly. You've got to time it to the exact nature of what you're doing at that time. I find them quite fiddly, but you know, it is a challenge for those who are getting deeper into the game. I deep striked my chariot into combat and took out a unit of Orruk brutes, albeit I had to roll twice to charge, but I was able to use a command point to do so and have 2 bites at the cherry there. The reason you can't see them is because they're dead. But then my opponent said, my Wurgog mask, Orc Shaman, is now going to laser eye you to death. And I was like, what in the world are you talking about? And he pointed to this rule. By tapping into the power of the mask, the wearer can shoot deadly green bolts from their eyes. But if they stare too long, their head may explode. And basically, at the start of the hero phase, which is kind of a magic phase, the guy rolls a dice on a 3+, he wounds you, great. Then he can choose to keep going and just dancing and staring, and if he rolls a 3+, then you suffer yet another D3 mortal wounds. But if he gets 1 or 2, he gets injured. But he'd given himself some kind of 4+ ward save, so whenever he hurt himself, he largely survived, and he's basically going to outroll you in terms of hurting himself versus hurting you before you die. And I was like, what is some kind of like Uga Shaka kind of, I can't stop this feeling deep inside my eyes. And so the whole game store just started singing Uga Shaka as he rolled 3+ until the chariot was gone. And so the chariot was gone. But then I got my Andrasta there on the right just to chuck a massive spear at the ballista thing on the left, which it just took out. Uga Shaka this, I said, as I deep striked in my Annihilators, who did what they needed to do and wiped out the face mask shaman. My left flank got quite terrified when the big pig started charging in. I mean, look at that. No one likes that. But equally, it reminded me of when I used to play the Resurrectionists in Malifaux many years ago, where you had to basically spend like the first 2 turns of the game doing all these weird magic spells to get body parts together to build even more undead. And the guy playing you was like, what are you doing? I want to play a game, and you're just sort of running your guys around your side of the table. And so the big pig had some kind of similar set of rules where the more it could build up momentum, the stronger its attacks were going to be. So I said, really? And then I focused all of my shooting, this unit and the giant crossbow bolt guys at the big pig, and then charged into the big pig with said unit and just took out the big pig, which caused possibly no damage to anyone. Then Indrasta and are they called Vindictors or Vigilors? I've lost track of these silly names. They have no connection or bearing with what they are. Anyway, so these guys just piled into the right flank, and that giant boss on Troggoth, he never lasted very long against Indrasta either, and that flank just collapsed. And then Indrasta, who hadn't taken any wounds at all, did her Joan of Arc shtick and piled into the Orc Megaboss, with whom I was fairly disappointed. He caused a number of wounds, but basically she polished him off as well, albeit my opponent did point out she's like 270 points and he's like 150 or something. So he said you would expect Joan to do her job over there. And once the Mega Boss had gone, the Big Pig had gone, the boss in Troggoth had gone, and most of the brutes had gone, we decided to call it. And it was a rare win for me. Albeit I did feel quite bad, because the only reason I won is because my opponent, who's normally fantastic at building very precision lists, just wanted to give me a bit of an equal game. And I said, you didn't have to actually let me win. And he was very nice. He said, look, we're just rolling some Warhammer Age of Sigmar dice, and I had fun. And you know what? I had fun too. And I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching to the end. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and let us all know if you'll be upgrading to Age of Sigmar 4 and buying a whole load more books.